Get ready to embrace debate. First Take starts now.
Coming up on the First Take podcast, the first round of the NFL draft is history in more ways than one. Will Johnny Manziel make the Browns relevant? And can Jadeveon Clowney lead the Texans to the playoffs? Plus, as the NBA playoffs continue, are we headed for a Heat Spurs finals? The First Take podcast starts right now. Great television last night, was it not, folks? Kerry Champion here with
Great ratings,
Bayless.
I know that.
Great ratings right there, the hugest ever. Thank you, Johnny. Kerry Champion, Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith in Miami. Stephen A., did you hear about these record-breaking ratings we had last night?
Well, I contributed to it. I had folks up in the media room in the arena here in Miami watching the draft too. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was riveting because I was wondering where was Johnny Manziel going to land.
For once, my friend, you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. You should have been in Cleveland, Ohio last night. You should have been the mayor of Cleveland.
Last night.
You might be right. You might be right. You might be right.
Gentlemen, as mentioned, great television. It seemed like the world waited to see where Johnny was going to go. Stephen A. said the media room was packed. We all wanted to know, high drama. Cleveland Browns did not pick Manziel with their 8th overall, but instead gave up their 26th pick and surrendered their 3rd round pick to grab Johnny football at the 22nd. Skip Bayless, the world awaits.
Kerry Champion.
Your reaction, sir.
Stephen A. Smith. 9 National Football League teams that needed a quarterback last night passed on Johnny Manziel, starting with the Houston Texans, who will forever regret passing on Johnny Manziel. And in a minute, I will go right down the list of teams that will forever regret passing on Johnny Manziel, who pretty soon will change football life in Cleveland, Ohio. One day, I am predicting, Johnny Manziel will become even bigger in the city of Cleveland than his buddy and business partner LeBron James ever was in the city of Cleveland. One day, the passing connection of Johnny Manziel to Josh Gordon will heat up Novembers and Decembers, and I'm predicting Januaries in Cleveland, Ohio. And we will have Josh Gordon on this show in just a little while to talk about how great that pick really was for Cleveland. And Stephen A., pretty soon, that dog pound in Cleveland is going to be hooting and hollering for Johnny Manziel, who has that dog in him. This was a sensational, game-changing, franchise-changing pick for Cleveland, and I'm going to give Cleveland this morning very little credit for getting this pick done. Because, do you realize the Cleveland Browns twice passed on Johnny Manziel and disrespected him? Twice they did. At 4 and 8, they passed on Johnny. At the 8th pick in the draft, the Cleveland Browns mind-blowingly took Justin Gilbert, a player I watched a lot, a cornerback at Oklahoma State. I like him, but I don't love him with the 8th pick over Johnny Manziel. Justin Gilbert would have been there in the 20s for Cleveland to take. But Cleveland went from idiotic to incredibly lucky last night because all of a sudden they woke up back at 26 and they said, wait a second. The whole league is saying, with the sheep think that this league follows, no. If they said no to Johnny, we better say no. And if they said no, now we better say no. And all of a sudden, down at 26, Cleveland said, yes, we can spend a 3rd round pick to go up to 22, and we can actually get Johnny Cleveland at 22. And they got him. From idiotic Justin Gilbert to lucky Johnny Manziel. And guess what? It was the greatest thing that could have ever happened to Johnny Manziel, because all of a sudden the chip that was on his shoulder pads at Texas A&M just got twice as big in Cleveland, Ohio. Do you remember, quickly, Stephen A., Johnny football dominated Texas high school football. He became legendary. And what happened? Nobody wanted him. The University of Texas, his dream school, said, no, you can't play quarterback in college. And finally, Chip Kelly said, I'll take a chance. And in the 11th hour, Texas A&M said, if Oregon will take a chance, maybe we should take a chance. Johnny Football played with a chip on his shoulder to show the world he could play college football at the highest level, and did he ever. And now Cleveland's going to benefit by their dissing of him twice. Everybody else is dissing of him twice, starting with Houston, then St. Louis, then Jacksonville. How did you pass Jacksonville? Oakland, Tampa Bay, mistake, mistake. Minnesota, all-time mistake. Tennessee, all-time mistake. Going all the way down to the Dallas Cowboys. And we'll talk about them in just a moment.
Yeah.
The stage is yours, Stephen Cleveland.
How'd you pass Jacksonville?
This is one of those. This is one of the rare moments, Skip Bayless, where I really don't have much to say, because I don't blame you. I didn't mind. I didn't mind conceding the floor to you. I totally understood it. I swear, I don't think I've ever thought about you more than I thought about you last night. I'm sitting there. I'm like, what? Here's where. You know what? Again, Clowney, relatively predictable. Robinson at number 2, relatively predictable. We understood that. You can't call that a mistake on the part of St. Louis or whatever. You're riding with Bradford. You need to improve and buffer your offensive line. You've got a multitude of issues you got to address. Not that big of a deal. But when Jacksonville took Bortles, I almost fainted. I couldn't believe it.
Bortles?
I said, I couldn't believe it.
Really?
What, Skip? Before we excoriate Jacksonville, before we do that, just a little caveat I want to throw out there. Where did Bortles play? Central Florida. I mean,
two hours away. He wasn't exactly a hometown boy.
But what I'm trying to say to you is that a homer. You know what I mean? It's just like Tebow when you wanted Jacksonville.
Okay, but at least he grew up in Jacksonville.
Well, let me say this. How far is Jacksonville from
2 hours?
From Gainesville. You know what I mean?
No, from Orlando.
No,
right?
I'm talking
Gainesville.
about when Tebow played for Florida, and you were talking about Jacksonville. Well, Central Florida, you know what I mean? It's like that local product. The same thing that we were alluding to with Johnny Manziel in Texas. You could make the argument that's what Jacksonville was thinking.
Nice.
With Bortles. So, but I still couldn't believe it, because I'm saying, I've heard a lot of good things about Bortles. You've got Jaws and others that have talked about Bortles. Jaws had him higher on his quarterback list than he did Manziel. But at the same time, I said to myself, Bortles ain't exactly box office.
All these people,
Manziel
what are they thinking?
Well, go ahead.
No, he can't.
I'm just looking at the list now. I look at team after team, and I'm saying, what were you thinking?
No, I agree with that.
But Kerry's own Anthony Barr from UCLA.
I understand.
Listen, I watched a bunch of your games last year. Remember, we had a bet on the Oregon game, so I watched the whole game just for you and this bet we had, silly as it was. Anthony Barr's got lots of ability, but he never jumps off my screen, and I say, there's the, what was he, the 8th pick in the draft, 9th pick in the draft. There's the 9th pick in the draft. Johnny Manziel's on the table, and you're saying, I think we'll reach for Anthony Barr. Really? Anthony Barr? You're kidding me.
No, you're not hearing me. You're not hearing me. I totally get you on everything else. I was just talking about how the biggest stunner for me,
I agree.
Other than the Cowboys,
I'm with you.
Other than the Cowboys, was Bortles getting picked at number 3. I almost fainted. I couldn't believe it, because I said, when Bortles got picked, I was like, oh my Lord, if he got picked there, and then Minnesota passed on him at 8, I was like, where's he going to land? And then I started salivating, because I said, oh, my goodness, Jerry Jones is going to grab him. Jerry Jones is going to grab him.
Wait, hold on. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. All right, let's go there. You know, we're getting there right now. Stephen A wants to jump ahead. You want to say something real quick?
I want to conclude with the fact. Johnny Manziel was incredibly humble and said all the right things for maybe the first time in his career, where he was completely politically correct. He came across as a mature young man last night. I respect that. I appreciate it. But I promise you, deep down, he was churning and burning about what happened to him just on his best behavior last night. Cleveland, in part because Cleveland dissed him twice, is going to get a player who's going to be driven to show the NFL world, if not Cleveland's own brass, its own management. You guys made 2 mistakes on me. Watch this. He said, watch this at A&M, watch this at Cleveland.
All right,
thank you.
Second round continues tonight at 7 Eastern on ESPN. Won't be nearly as exciting, but I don't know about you. There was a collective sigh of relief, or maybe not relief, when Johnny Manziel was dropping, and we were trying to figure out if, in fact, he was going to go to Jerry's world. Well, listen, it did not happen. After it was all said and done, a reporter asked Manziel about the possibility of him playing for the Dallas Cowboys. Let's listen.
I don't know if the world could have handled that, honestly. Not a whole lot of thoughts. It took every pick the same, but obviously my relationship with Jerry and getting to know him a little bit over the past is been well documented, but I feel like they got a great player and they did what they needed to do to help better their team.
Yeah, Stephen A., he said it best. He didn't know if the world could actually handle him in Dallas. You wanted to go because we were going to be at training camp, and that would have been exciting for you. Know, are you surprised Jerry Jones did not pick up Manziel?
I was shocked. I could not believe that Jerry Jones passed on him. And I had two trains of thought. I mean, on one hand, I was like, well, maybe Jerry Jones, maybe this is step one towards really improving on his football acumen and building this franchise, etc., and not going for the splash. But then I said, no, these are the Cowboys. It's Jerry. The accident waiting to happen once again has happened because you needed Johnny Manziel because I don't know if Tony Romo is going to have anything for you. He's coming off of back surgery. He's coming off of a back injury. Now, you might want to buffer your offensive line. You pick Martin out of Notre Dame. I get all of this stuff, but the point is, in the end, if you're Dallas, it's not just about wins and losses. It's about the show. And as Skip would say, Johnny Manziel was both. And the fact that the Dallas Cowboys passed up on that because it's the Dallas Cowboys leads me to feel even more strongly that they made a mistake passing up on Johnny Manziel because the Dallas Cowboys really do anything right. So the fact that you sat up there and you had Johnny Football on the table and you passed up on him, this opportunity to move beyond the Tony Romo era, and you passed up on that, not just to get another player, not just to get somebody that you could possibly perceive as being another player, but to protect Tony Romo. That's at the heart and the core of their problems in Big D. Everything's about Tony Romo. Everything's about Jerry Jones protecting his boys as opposed to making sure you put yourself in the best position to win. They dropped the ball. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was shocked, and I just laughed because I said, an accident waiting to happen. Yet again, they've proven themselves again that they just can't get it right. Dallas made a huge mistake passing up on Johnny Manziel. I think more so than anybody outside of Jacksonville. I really do.
I must tell you, and I'm going to speak strictly as a Cowboy fan at this moment.
Okay.
I'm going to disagree with you.
What?
Now listen to me. Listen to me. I have incredibly mixed emotions. Obviously, Johnny Dallas would have been so great for this show, for this network, for the preseason, for every day from here on. We would have been talking Johnny Cowboy, right? I mean, come on.
Every day.
It would have been all-time double great. Jerry plus Johnny. It's almost like Jimmy and Jerry revisited. You know, it's the next phase. But Stephen A., my emotions are mixed because as a Cowboy fan, I have to accept the fact that Jerry Jones made an undoable mistake when just a year ago, as you well know, painfully I know, he signed Tony Romo to a long-term deal. And he gave him $55 million up front, which counts hard against that salary cap. It is a cap killer for the near future. And to try to undo that is virtually impossible. To try to cut that loss would be so damaging to the near future of the Cowboys that as a fan, it's almost too painful to bear. I'm on record. Johnny Manziel will be much more successful, especially in the postseason, than Tony Romo ever has or will be. I've given up. I've cut bait with Tony Romo, but I can't cut bait with him cap-wise because I'm stuck with him. So for the first time, I had mixed emotions about Jerry that we have condemned on this show repeatedly as having gone over the edge into becoming the ringmaster of the cowboy circus, right? The showman who prioritizes TV ratings over victories. That's my conclusion here in the recent weeks on this show. You've lost it, Jerry. Now it's all about moral victories as long as you lose 51-48 to Peyton Manning on the Sunday national stage. Even if Tony Romo throws a mind-blowing interception to lose the game, at least everybody was wildly entertained. But last night, he took what I think was the safest pick in the draft at that point, the least sexy pick in the draft, the least star power name in the whole first round of the draft, Zach Martin, and he's done it 2 years in a row. Do you remember at this spot in the draft last year? He took a center from Wisconsin named Travis Frederick, who, by the way, started every game last year, and by all accounts, and it's hard for me to grade centers, he was really, really good last year. Zach Martin has no flaws that I know of. I think you can plug him in at one of the guards and maybe ultimately one of the tackles, and he'll be a Pro Bowl player. Do you realize Zach Martin, for the first time in 50 years of bowl games in America, was the MVP of a bowl game, Notre Dame's 29-16 victory over Rutgers in the Pinstripe Bowl, you know, that one at Yankee Stadium? He was the MVP. I don't know how does a tackle become MVP? I don't know, but he did. So I'm going to give him that. So on resume, it's a no-brainer. Take Zach Martin. But on box office, it's awful. It left me flat. It left Cowboy fans like, we went from Johnny Manziel to Zach Martin in an instant. But you know what? At least it's a sign that Jerry actually wants to win next year. Because if you have Johnny, I don't know what you do with Johnny next year. Do you keep him on ice for a couple of years while Tony plays out the string and sucks up the rest of his $55 million with 2 back surgeries going on 35 and then 36? Is that what you do? Again, I would love to have him, but I would prefer to be more respectable next year after 8-8, 8-8, 8-8.
Well, Skip, all your arguments, you make very salient points. I'm not disrespecting them. But let's live in the real world here. Tony Romo has been the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys for 8 years.
Yep.
He has a grand total of 1 playoff victory.
That
is it. He has been out of the playoffs the last, 4 years? Last 3 years, 8-8. Not only have they lost the last 3 years, Skip, but they lost the last game of the regular season. And on top of it all, they lost to all 3 teams in their division. You just said he's 35. He's no Peyton Manning. He's no Tom Brady. He's no Drew Brees. But he's 35 with a bad back. I'm sorry. What I'm saying to you is, yes, Jerry Jones made the right pick. But why did he make the right pick? It's not just because of years of futility. It's because of years of futility provoked by him and his son Stephen because of the picks and the selections that they've made leading up to this moment. So again, if you got that going on, all right, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, well, how do you make amends for this? Because when I think about my future, although I have to protect my quarterback, I also have to make sure I have one. Because I don't know what Tony Romo is going to be able to give me with 2 back surgeries, okay? I know we saw him hanging out at Duke. I know we saw him shooting from the perimeter. But last time I checked, playing basketball, a game of horse, or just being out there shooting around doesn't involve any kind of contact where you're going to get hit blindside. So, again, we don't know about his availability. And since you don't know about that, and the quarterback is the most important position, and you got a guy who is box office and homegrown, what I'm saying to you is it makes sense. But how many times have we looked at moves the Dallas Cowboys have made and said, it makes sense?
Okay.
Only to watch the season unfold and realize it didn't make any sense at all.
Everything you just said makes nothing but sense, except for the fact that there is a salary cap in the National Football League. If we were talking baseball, you could ask bottomless budget Jerry, bottomless pocket Jerry Jones to swallow the $55 million. Eat it, Jerry. Pay the kid off, or pay Tony off, and send him packing. because it won't count against your cap. There is no cap in baseball. This counts prorated $55 million against the cap for the lifetime of this contract.
Right.
It's a cap killer. So you might as well try to maximize part of it for the next year or two, because I'm stuck with it. And you realize what Jerry's done now in 3 of the last 4 drafts. He went left tackle, center, guard. So all of a sudden you're rebuilding a pretty good offensive line that might just be able to protect the guy with the bad back who's getting old. Maybe Tony can have a couple of decent years because he'll be more protected.
You know what? I don't disagree with that, Skip, but I guess my argument is I think we're arguing apples and oranges. I don't disagree with what you're saying. But what I'm saying to you is let's recognize that the reason why this pick was sensible was because of the nonsensible decisions previously made. Yeah. It's just it's the combination. In other words, we want to sit up here and give Jerry Jones a cookie today because he messed up the previous 3, 4, and 5 years. That's what I'm trying to say. If you make an abundance of questionable decisions and then it puts you in a hole where you have to make this obvious safe selection, well, what do you want, a cookie? All of this stuff that you've been doing is what led to you having to pass on Johnny Manziel, and it was culminated with the fact that the mistakes that you made, you compounded by guaranteeing Tony Romo all of these dollars despite his ineptitude. He didn't make the postseason. When he made it, he only won one playoff game. And you still give him $55 million in guaranteed money? What are you thinking?
I don't know.
This is chickens coming home to roost. This is Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys being the accident waiting to happen.
Okay.
And it happened again.
But just so I'm not looking like a hypocrite here, when that deal came down, I said, no, Jerry, no. A lot of other commentators said, you know what, Tony Romo's a top 10 sort of quarterback. That's a good idea. That's a good investment. No, it's not.
No.
It's terrible. And yet, once it's made, once it's signed on the dotted line, I can't get out of it as a fan. I'm stuck with it. So I want Johnny to be my long-term quarterback, my future. He'd be my hope. But at what price?
I just thought that when you're a quarterback and you're getting paid big money, I thought you're supposed to produce. I didn't think that you would get rewarded for your team missing the playoffs year after year after year. But again, listen, I want to work for Jerry Jones one day. Evidently, I don't have to be successful. Just be marketable. And you, too, can get a fat contract from Jerry Jones. Way to go.
So
I'd love to work for Jerry Jones.
Think about
Absolutely.
this. Bottom line, Johnny Manziel is sitting on a metallic silver platter for the Dallas Cowboys, and he takes Zach Martin from Notre Dame. Thank you, Jerry. I will bet you any number of dinners that Johnny won't last to number 33. Want to bet?
Yeah.
Okay.
How many dinners?
Yeah, I'm trying to lose weight.
Okay.
One dinner.
Okay, that is odd.
That Johnny goes.
It's getting cold real quick.
Who has to pay up? I'm confused. Who has to pay up?
I have an announcement to
make. An announcement.
I am going to rescind that bet.
Oh, you're so generous.
Because, you know what? You should have held my feet back to the fire, and you should have said you win only if Johnny goes top 5. I was shocked that he fell to 22, so I don't feel like I won that bet. You obviously didn't win the bet.
Here, I brought something for you, too, a little towel, because I'm sure you were sweating a lot last night while
watching
a
lot in the first segment of the show.
He was. He lost his mind. We had to put him in a seatbelt.
Hey.
Okay, so look, topic at hand. First of all, Josh, thank you for being here. Stephen A., Jaws is in the house.
What's going on, George?
Stephen A., you had him rallied out there at the basketball game, huh? You had all the press up in that media room.
Hey, man, I'm watching you, too. Great job, as always. Great job. Keep doing what you're doing.
All right, so let's talk about Blake Bortles, someone who did not drop. Actually, a surprise. You were high on him, but definitely a surprise. The former Central Florida quarterback, arguably the surprise pick. Jacksonville takes him 3rd overall. You remember back in, I think, 2011 when they took Blaine Gabbert, 10th overall? Let's compare. Let's talk about this. Good move or bad move?
On Blaine Gabbert, obviously a bad move.
Yeah.
I like Blake Bortles. And
that much?
Yeah.
Do you like him at 3?
I probably wouldn't have taken him at 3, but he was the only quarterback that I thought had the ability to be taken in the first round. I saw that kind of projection for him. Now, my prism is always a little bit different when it comes to the quarterback evaluation. I like the prototypical NFL pocket passer. History has shown that gives that quarterback a better percentage chance of being successful. You know, the Tom Brady, the Peyton Manning, the Joe Flacco, those guys that hang in a pocket and deliver the football. A better percentage. I'm not saying it always works. It doesn't. There's no always in the National Football League, or there's a lot of ways to do it. But I did like Blake Bortles. Now the question is, can the Jaguars build the team around him? And that's critical for the quarterback on every team. I like Blake Bortles. I probably wouldn't have taken him there. I probably thought he was a mid-first round pick, but. If they felt that was the guy, here's to me, this is most important. You know, we all have our personal feelings about players, where they should go. If the Jacksonville Jaguars felt that was the guy that they wanted on their board, their entire organization was behind it, then go for it. Who cares what Jaws or Stephen A. or Skip think? You got to believe in your organization.
Go ahead, Skip.
You know what? Yeah, I agree with that, George. But you also got to make sense. And let me say this. If you read the reports, according to Jacksonville, they would have taken him even if Clowney was still on the board. According to Jacksonville, didn't matter that he was sacked 51 times in the last 3 years. Didn't matter that, you know, definitively speaking, he didn't separate himself from everybody else in that regard. It seems to me like what everybody's raving about is the fact that he worked out at the NFL Scouting Combine. He was looking to throw and accept challenges and compete or at any given moment, anytime he was asked, which is a big deal. I understand that. And I like Bortles personally. But I just think that when you say that he was your guy no matter what, I sort of find that hard to believe. It's just me. But I guess I shouldn't.
Don't we hear that? Don't we hear that from almost every team? That's the PR spin you have to put on after you take the guy. That's the guy we targeted. That's the guy we wanted. We were just hoping he would be there. That's the spin doctors. We know that. And these coaches and scouts, you know, they throw out there, he had a good pro day or, you know, whatever, you know, piqued their interest. But at the end of the day, it's an incredible background check they do on players, not only from the film study, but the character. Going back to their kindergarten teacher, what kind of player was this guy? What kind of student was he? What kind of personality was he? They go to their parents' background. When you're investing $20 to $25 million, this is what takes place.
Quick
you
question,
study
George.
These guys.
Quick question, George, before you and Skip go on. Do you have a problem with the fact that they've already come out and said he won't be the guy next year? Chad Henne's going to be our starter. I understand that with the first round pick, but the number 3 overall pick, I kind of want to see from week 1. Am I wrong in feeling that way?
I applaud that they have a plan. Obviously, their plan is he's going to be the backup quarterback to Chad Henne. I don't necessarily agree with that. I would say when you got a Chad Henne that's there, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to compete. And Blake, if you beat him out, boom, it's over with. Then you're the quarterback. I think to say he's going to sit kind of sends a mixed signal.
Okay, so obviously, as a Johnny football guy, I fell out of my chair when they took Bortles at 3 because I thought there was a chance they would take Manziel, in part because of the box office, what Coach Gruden kept talking about as the electricity of it, the energy of having Johnny football to sort of reignite your whole franchise. And we all know that is as moribund, dead a franchise as you can find in the league right now. They can't sell half their seats. But I was relieved for Manziel because I didn't want to see him go to that place. I didn't think it was a good fit for him, and it could be a dead end. It could be a dead end for Blake Bortles. It could be tough on him.
Skip, 3rd pick in the draft, 32nd pick in the draft. He was the 22nd player selected. He's the 22nd best player in the world. You know, there should be no disappointment.
Okay,
I mean, there really shouldn't be. Now, I know where you're coming from because he's a guy that you really like, and I get all that. And he certainly does bring a charisma to a team, to a city. You're absolutely right. Cleveland needs that. My personal feeling is, at the end of the day, I don't care how many empty seats you have, how many full seats you have, how many shirts you can sell, all that stuff. You don't need any of that stuff if you win.
I agree.
So it's up to the coach. and the director of player personnel and GM to put a team together that can win. To me, that's all that matters. So we're going to find out now if Johnny Manziel, if Blake Bortles, if Teddy Bridgewater was the right pick. And history has shown us 50% of the time.
50%.
50% of the time.
50% of those picks last night were wrong.
Right, we're wrong. That's what we're going to find out.
Back to Blake Bortles.
Yep.
This amuses me. I was not a Blaine Gabbert guy. Sat right here in this chair. I said, nope, not a franchise quarterback. They took him 10th overall. I said, that's a big mistake. Blaine Gabbert, 6'5", 235. People forget that. All I heard about Blake Bortles, he's a big, strapping kid. He's Roethlisberger. He's not quite as big as Blaine Gabbert is. Now, again, he has a different mentality. I think he's a tougher kid. I always question the toughness of Blaine Gabbert at Missouri. But Blake Bortles, again, I didn't watch him as much as you did on tape. I saw 2 TV games. I saw at Penn State and I saw versus Baylor in the bowl game. And he was really good in those games, but I saw a big kid, and I told you this yesterday, not the biggest arm, not the greatest mechanics, a lot of swing screens, a lot of short stuff that broke because he had a nice core of receivers. And I'm saying, is that a franchise changer? Are you sure about this one? And yet you go to his pro day. You did not go, as I recall, to Johnny's pro day.
Did
right?
not.
Okay, so you go to Blake's pro day, and you got to meet him, you got to see it, you said you saw the ball flying out of his hand, and that means a lot to you. Yeah,
means a lot to me. Correct.
So, and then you got to sit with him, and he comes across as a great kid.
Charismatic
right?
young man.
Yeah.
Correct.
And he won you over. So if you're picking for Jacksonville, you're thinking, gee, we got our one shot here. You might have pulled that trigger. You might have at 3 if you said, that's our shot to get our quarterback.
If everyone is on board with that pick. And you know, I always got this with me, my quarterback attributes, and toughness is one of them. And I call it looking down the gun barrel. And you're absolutely correct on Blaine Gabbert. You know, we saw that in college. I said he should have stayed another year. In fact, my general premise is I would like all these young men to finish their collegiate career, to not only grow physically, but grow mentally. You've got these guys 19, 20 years old coming in. Guys, they're going to start going to these camps. You know what they're doing? They're going to see men. This is football now. They're going to see men who have wives and kids to support. They're going to find out what competition is all about. This isn't about, hey, let's go to college and have some fun and let's go to the next frat party. This is serious business. And that's why I'd like these guys to stay, finish their collegiate career. So when they come out, they're much more prepared for the rigors of the National Football League.
Okay, so give us your bottom line. Now that we know Johnny fell and then landed in Cleveland, what's his future in Cleveland? Gut feeling.
Yeah, you know, I actually, and I said this yesterday, I think Cleveland was going to get a quarterback in this draft. And there's a core of solid players on that football team right now.
Yeah.
You look at Alex Mack, the center, Joe Thomas, the left tackle, 2 outstanding football players. Jordan Cameron, one of the better, if not one of the best tight ends in the National Football League. Josh Gordon. Andrew Hawkins, you can't cover this guy in the slot. And oh, by the way, you got Ben Tate. And now you spin this with the fit. And Johnny Manziel can move. And I love the bootlegs when you come backside out of the stretch running game, that zone running game. Michael Vick, I mean, shredded the NFL with those backside, play action bootlegs. And now you spread the defense, not vertically end zone, but that 160 feet horizontally, sideline to sideline. So when I look at this offense, I think Johnny Manziel could have success with the players that are around him.
And to me, Josh Gordon, almost quietly, was the breakout player in the NFL last year. Look at the numbers he was putting up later in the year, that 8 games late in the year. It was staggering what he did. And he loves Johnny Manziel. We had him on the show, what was it?
March.
We
had him in March.
And he said, I want Johnny. Yeah. Well, that's a start. That's...
He's got him. He's got him. Yeah, he's got him. It's going to be interesting because you look at that division. Yeah. This is a division that's defensive oriented. When you look at the Ravens and the Steelers, they're just, you see Big D for Dick LeBeau's defense. That's the way they play. You look at Cincinnati, outstanding defensive team. So he's coming into the second toughest division. I think the NFC West defensive-wise is, oh, man, it's a beast, Sure. But he's coming to a tough defensive division, and all of a sudden, who do you open up week 1 with? Stephen A.? The Pittsburgh Steelers and Dick LeBeau, who historically has just destroyed rookie quarterbacks.
That's a loss already?
The Steelers are winning opening day.
Okay.
I'm not sure Johnny will start opening day because they really liked that other kid last year.
To be continued.
He's pretty good.
Here's I like the combination. Brian is a very unselfish guy.
He is.
He's one of those gym rats we talk about. He just loves football. He'll do whatever it takes. He'll be a good mentor for Johnny Football.
Yeah.
Oh, you took us there. Flash Gordon. Josh will be on the show a little later on, so you guys want to stick around and see what he has to say about Johnny. Jaws. It's always a pleasure. Are we done with you? Is that it? That's it? That's all we got? Okay.
Miss you, Stephen. I like we can have some fun over here.
I don't feel the love, George.
What
You're
do you
leaving
mean?
too early.
Well,
You're leaving too early?
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, that's okay. We love
I
you.
didn't want to disappoint you, Stephen A.
You seriously didn't know as of 6 minutes ago. So what was that moment like?
Man, I was nervous, man. I'm like, who they gonna pick? Who they gonna pick? They didn't give me a phone call. I was just, man, I had to let it out. I was happy about that moment, that situation.
You have been #1 recruit out of high school, such high expectations. What kind of expectations do you think there are now?
Even more, you know, I'm ready to live up to them, though. I'm ready to get to work. No matter what people say about me, man, I know how I am. I know I can approach this game the way I want to. I'm just going to take my game to the next level, go out here and learn the game, and just play, man.
Yeah, the Texans considered trading their top pick and remained open to the process, but they were asking too much. Perhaps that's the reason why Clowney said he did not know until about 6 minutes before they called his name. Top pick, Jadeveon Clowney. Stephen A. Smith joining us now is our analyst, Ryan Clark. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Stephen A., question, your reaction?
I was happy for him, to be quite honest with you. You know, obviously, in terms of talent, he was considered the #1 guy. He was considered the closest thing to a sure thing. So on a football level, you know, it was relatively predictable, not that surprising. But it really didn't have anything to do with my personal emotions. My personal emotions were I was happy for him because I detest the whole NFL system as it pertains to dissecting and evaluating guys coming out of college because the kind of stuff that they put them through, the pro days, the NFL scouting combines, the Wonderlic test, invasive measures into their background. It's understandable considering the money that you have to invest in them, and I'm not denigrating it on that level. But when you see some of the stuff, the innuendos that are thrown out there, unsubstantiated reports where you're talking about guys to the level that they talked about this guy before he ever got his money. When you're a professional athlete and you're getting paid these big bucks and so many people have their monetary interests to protect, as much as people may abhor that process, we understand it. But there's an excessive level of cruelty that comes attached to it when you consider the fact that a guy is in college and, you know, he's coming out, he's going to enter the draft, and the first thing you hear is that kind of innuendo. He didn't work hard. He didn't do this, that, or the third. And then his coach, who he played for 3 years, comes out and substantiates such things by alluding to it because he's being measured against a former player playing running back for South Carolina whose work ethic was considered unparalleled. And from that point forward, it nosedived to the point where this has not been an enjoyable process for Jadeveon Clowney. It's been a cruel one. And it's been a cruel one, and I'm not throwing Merrill Hodge into that equation because what I got from him was somebody who's simply a football analyst, looked at the tape and made his evaluation. There's nothing wrong with that. Those are big boy rules. But the personal stuff about Jadeveon that was just thrown out there, it was clearly in jeopardy of endangering his money, and nobody cared. And so it was nice to see the Houston Texans shove all of that aside and ultimately make this brother the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft. Because what they said is, we're going to go by the eye test and what we've seen. We're not going to worry about all of this stuff everybody else is saying about you. And on a rare occasion, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing to see and hear.
Well, for me, when they made the pick, my reaction was, duh. Yeah. I mean, you talking about a guy, he comes out his freshman year. They say he may be behind RG3 and Andrew Luck.
Yep.
Last year, he would have been the #1 overall pick.
Pretty sure he would have.
And then you have this year coming. When have we ever had an isolation camera on a defensive end? There was no way he was going to live up to those expectations. And then now, because we knew he was so talented, people started to knock him down at every turn they got. He doesn't work hard. He bailed it in. And the media tore him down when before they were saying, you don't even have to play. Maybe this guy should sit out the whole season and just go number one. But he went out there. He faced double team. He faced triple teams. He faced leg whip. So for me, I was more relieved that the Texans just went ahead and did the right thing for their organization and also by this kid. When we think of the NFL, we think of all the great things that come along with it. You know, you get money, you get fame, chances to build lives for your family. But it's also a price you have to pay being in the spotlight the way that he was. And I think it was a really tough process for him. And you heard him say, he was like, when I finally got the call, like, who they going to take, who they going to take, I was relieved. He didn't say I was happy. He didn't say I was ecstatic. He said I was relieved. Because for him, knowing what you've done on the field, knowing the tape that you put out there, to not know when you're that good, if you're going to be the number one pick until 6 minutes, it's ridiculous. You know how this draft works. The way it's working lately, guys have their contracts done before draft night. And so for a guy this good to have to wait this long to know when his name was going to be called,
and that's
it was sad.
Crying. He saw that relief off his face.
Okay, I'm going to take the emotion out of it. And I do agree with both of your points, and they're poignant points, and they're valid. But you, Ryan Clark, made the point to me and stopped me in my tracks yesterday. This is the safe pick, is to go with Clowney. And I hadn't thought of him as that safe because maybe I do overanalyze. But when I thought yesterday about Clowney to number one overall Houston, it gave me pause only because I'm not sure about his drive, what I'm going to boil down as rage to win. Because it did concern me. It didn't trouble me. It concerned me a little bit. And remember, this is the kid I said 2 years ago. He's a better pass rusher than anybody in your league right now in the NFL. That's how gifted this kid is. When he's cranked up, man, he is unblockable by 3 people. And I'm going back 2 regular seasons ago. Now, you're right. We train cameras on it. We expect nothing but domination from him this year. And every stat fell. And I'm pretty sure he took it down a couple of notches this year. I could be wrong, and again, we've had all kinds of analysts, Todd McShay come in, Mel come in and say, wait a second, he's fighting triple teams, so he gets frustrated, and after a while, it's like, how many of these plays can I chase? I'm just getting sick and tired of this. I want out of college football, and plus, as you well know, you do need to protect yourself to some degree, because if you hurt yourself, nobody's going to take care of you, right? I mean, career-threatening injury. So I still say, I sit back, and I've covered the NFL for so long, I've gone through a Mike Singletary. There's no way. If you told Mike Singletary at Baylor, you got to shut it down this year, man. You got to protect your body. He's crazed. He plays with crazed rage. You and I have talked about Charles Haley, who now has 5 Super Bowl rings. Out of his mind every game. You couldn't have turned down his motor at any stage of his career. Preseason, he's not going to turn his motor down. Lawrence Taylor, the man was out of his mind. We're going to attack like a pack of wild dogs, and he was crazy. But he had the motor. Does Jadeveon have that motor? Because here's the point. Hang on, Stephen A. Here's the point. If somehow he had fallen to 2 or 3, now he's been really disrespected. He's not relieved. He's mad because you mean the Houston Texans courted me all that time? I spent all that time with them, and they dumped me down to 2 and 3, and finally I went to Jacksonville or wherever he might go. Well, then you've got chip on shoulder the way Johnny does at 22. I'm going to show the world. When you go number 1 overall, you're relieved, and you might think in the back of your mind, I made it. I arrived. That's my fear for Houston is, if that's his mentality going forward, I finally made it, Mama. And he said, I'm going to take care of my mom. And it was a beautiful moment last night. But if that's what he's thinking in his head, I finally made it. And it's not the money, because the money anymore on this cap system is not that great. It's not like set for life kind of money like it used to be when Sam Bradford got $50 million guaranteed. But still, it's a lot of money, and it's the announcement of your name is you're the best guy in the draft. Is he going to be cranked next year? I don't know. That's my only concern.
Stephen A.
Skip, I hear where you're coming from, but I think that it's important to note that, again, there's a dichotomy that has to exist, that has to be made clear here. There's a difference between those who give analysis, whether it's yourself, Merrill Hodge, Jaws, Ryan Clark, or whomever. You're giving analysis based on what you see on the tape. Nobody is trying to give Jadeveon Clowney a pass on that. If you seem like your motor wasn't churning as much as it used to in previous years, y'all have an obligation to point that out with your analysis, and he has an obligation playing by big boy rules to accept and embrace it and not moan and groan about it. But this was different. And this was different because whether it's the Norakis of the world, and I'm not saying he said something specifically, but I'm just talking about that kind of analysis, whether it's that or a guy like Steve Spurrier, who you performed for, who used your exploits to elevate the profile of his program, okay? All of a sudden it's going out there and you're knocked. And he's given substantiated material to your being knocked because you wasn't Marcus Lattimore, because you didn't go out there and play through not one but two ugly ACL injuries and all of this other stuff. You're getting knocked for that. That's what was happening to Clowney. And so when we look at that, it's one thing to look at the tape and say, this is what we saw. It's one thing to sit there and analyze, well, you know what? He didn't want to get injured because he wanted to make sure he got to the NFL. And some people can't turn off that motor, the Charles Haley's of the world and others. It's one thing to do that. But it's another thing entirely when that's ignored in the initial diagnosis and the evaluations that came out there. This kid was operating behind the 8 ball for damn near 3 to 4 months.
Yep.
And his joy was completely stripped of him because your college coach, Steve Spurrier, came out there and contributed to naysayers who pointed to a lack of effort. And there is nothing worse when you are a potential or an aspiring professional athlete. There is nothing worse to have knocked against you than for somebody, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, than for somebody to say you're not working hard. I can't think of a bigger indictment than that.
Yeah, that's tough. And also, Steve, to your point about, Skip, to your point about Lawrence Taylor, Mike Singletary, Charles Haley, these were different type dudes. And these were guys that played in a different time. There was no rivals, top 100. These guys weren't stars and followed their whole life. And another thing about Clowney, he doesn't necessarily have to play like they have to play to be great. Mike Singletary wasn't as talented as Jadeveon Clowney. Charles Haley wasn't as talented as Jadeveon Clowney. Now, LT, maybe so. Yep. So he can still go out and play and perform. And remember, he has to earn a second contract now.
Right.
Like to your point, you don't get $60 million guaranteed coming out. He has to go out and earn it, and I think he'll do that.
Okay, Ryan Clark, you expect Jadeveon Clowney to be an every week after week beast in the National Football League.
Yeah, Jadeveon Clowney likes to play football on game day. He's going to be a week-to-week guy. And remember, you're saying he feels like he arrived at one. When you got beat down for 5 months before that, it's not arriving. Now you do have to go out and prove people wrong.
Hey,
they
Ryan,
say you don't work hard, work hard.
Ryan, Skip, nothing to worry about. You know why? Because he's getting paid now.
Okay.
There's nothing to worry about. Now he gets to just go out there and play because he's getting paid. He's not worried about an injury preventing him from getting paid. The check is going to get cut before he plays a game. He'll be fine.
Okay, so to sum this up, we're actually, according to Ryan, talking about a disrespected #1 overall pick.
Yes.
Right?
I think so.
That's
Right.
a new world, man.
That's a good way to take it.
Okay.
I felt any team that was on the clock, whatever the situation was, I felt that there was a possibility. So never did I get too high on one or too low on the other. I think there wasn't a possibility. Obviously, there were some trades tonight, and you never knew when they were going to happen or what was going to happen. This was a little bit of a wacky draft, and I think everybody knew going into that there was some uncertainty, and not everyone knew exactly where each player was going to be pegged.
So after the draft, obviously, he met up with his good buddy Drake. They're best friends. Obviously, they've made it, clearly. All of them have made it, Ryan. So here's the question, because we didn't get your take on this. He waited in the green room for nearly 3 hours before being picked up. You were covering it last night, right?
Yes.
You were here covering SportsCenter. Were you surprised that they took him that low?
I wasn't. I wasn't surprised because he made it that far. Obviously, it was a consensus amongst the people doing the draft evaluations that that's where Johnny Manziel was supposed to go. I don't know if Cleveland doesn't move up and waits at 26 if he's not still on the board. I heard you say earlier that Justin Gilbert would be on the board at 26. I don't think he would have.
In the 20s, I said. Somewhere in the 20s.
At 20, I don't think he would have, but Johnny obviously was. So for the Cleveland Browns, it's a great job of doing your draft analysis, understanding what the other people on the board are going to want, and waiting on Johnny Manziel. I honestly, at one point, tweeted that wouldn't it be really cool if the Texans could get Jadeveon Clowney at the #1 pick overall and then get Johnny Manziel at the top of the second round, because I felt like it was possible for him to fall that far. When Minnesota comes out, and I don't know why, and I really have a West Coast football bias. I'm sorry, Carrie.
That's okay.
You know, about defensive players. When Minnesota passed on him, I felt like he was in trouble. I just didn't see Jerry, even with all his reality TV show and much as he wants ratings, being able to make that pick. The football people around him allowing him to make that pick for that franchise. And so when the board shakes out the way it does, Johnny had to fall. Blake Bortles goes at 3, and I think it messes up the rest of the draft as far as the quarterbacks go. I think Cleveland's a good spot for him. At 22, like you said, he can have a chip on his shoulder.
He will.
And I don't feel the pressure's the same at 22 as it is at 4.
All right, Stephen A. Ryan, not surprised that Johnny Manziel went 22. Your take?
I was shocked. I was shocked because I thought that it's something that Jerry would do, and I'm shocked that Ryan would sit there and say that his football people wouldn't allow him to do X, Y, and Z. When does that stop Jerry? When does that stop the Cowboys? I mean, you know, the fact that this has happened is an aberration. It certainly is not the norm. Is it a good thing? Listen, this guy, Zach Martin, can play some football. There's no doubt about it. And he could be a guard, and he's going to excel on the next level. Nobody's trying to knock him. But at the same time, when you consider the questionable health of Tony Romo, the cap dollars obviously has a lot to do with it. But the fact that the Dallas Cowboys felt the need to make such an incredible commitment to Tony Romo in the face of all the ineptitude this franchise has suffered from over the years is nothing short of mind-boggling. To most people anyway. To me, it's simply in line with what I think about the Cowboys. Accident waiting to happen. It always does. It comes.
I think a whole bunch of accidents happened last night, way above 22. I'm not going to back off. And thank God for Coach Gruden on our airwaves last night, because
he might have got Johnny Manziel drafted.
He might have
30 times in 20 seconds.
Ray Lewis was right. He kept saying since the first pick, Johnny's on the board. Right? Johnny's on the board. Just kept reminding everybody, Johnny's on the board.
Well, he was right, and he was gutsy and honest and accurate. I'm just going to quickly go down the list. The Houston Texans made an all-time mistake. Someday people will say, yeah, you're right about that. I think St. Louis made a mistake. I'm not a Sam Bradford guy. I'm not a hypocrite, because I said before the draft, not sold, not durable, not a tough guy, not there when you really need him. Watched every snap he took at the University of Oklahoma. I would have gone Manziel there. Obviously, what do you think in Jacksonville? I have no idea. Blake Bortles over Johnny Manziel? When you're this doormat franchise that can't sell any seats, then the Oakland Raiders. Coach Gruden, exactly right. He coached them. He knows it. Johnny, you're made for the black hole. What are you thinking, Oakland? I don't know. And then we go to Tampa Bay. Everybody's saying, you know, Lovey might just fall in love with Johnny Football. Nope, he didn't fall in love with Johnny Football. He fell in love with his receiver that I thought was somewhat, no disrespect to Mike Evans, but I thought he was somewhat a product of Johnny Manziel.
You've been saying that on the show.
Just somewhat a product. Not to take anything away, but I think they'll be a little bit disappointed in Mike Evans that high in the draft. And then Minnesota. What are you thinking, Minnesota? Come on. Anthony Barr instead of Johnny Football? Are you kidding me? Well, it's a joke. That's someday you'll look back. Minnesota, Mike Zimmer, you'll say, that was the biggest swing and miss in the history of the Vikings since we traded our whole draft for Herschel Walker, right? Oh, boy. Okay, and then Tennessee. It's Johnny Football. Come on, you got to do it. And then we get to Dallas, and we've gone back and forth. And again, I did like it a little bit that Jerry actually made a football decision instead of a showmanship ringmaster decision. I wanted Johnny for the long term, but I can't undo the salary cap. So to me, big picture, I say I can't even give Cleveland much credit for this because, Ryan, you can't tell me it was the master plan. The grand plan on Wednesday night was, guess what? We will trade out of 4.
Yes.
We'll trade back to 9, then we'll trade up to 8 or however it was. Is that it? Yeah, back up to 8 because that's where we'll get Justin Gilbert. I thought Darqueze was a better player. Which way you go?
It depends on what you want to do. 2 very different guys. Justin's the ball guy, a guy a lot like Joe Hayden.
Yep.
And you pair those 2 up, I think you have a very good tandem. And Darqueze is a edge setter.
Yep.
He's a guy who plays the press man, and you can put him in cover 2 in type situation. When you have Joe Hayden and you're gonna have Justin Gilbert out there, those guys are going to be man to man with Dante Whitner in the middle making plays. So I think it's a good.
But I agree. I watched a lot of Justin Gilbert, and he will make plays on the ball. He will not make plays on the ball carry.
No, I agree with that.
And so it's a problem. And there are times he doesn't cover that well. Go pull the tape on Blake Bell taking my Oklahoma Sooners down the field in the last seconds to win the game. See what happened to Justin Gilbert. I don't know. I'm not sure that he's the 8th pick in the draft. He might have been there in the 20s. But again, you could flip-flop that. But you tell me it was the grand plan that, oh, we'll sit back at 26, and then clearly all these teams are going to pass on Johnny, and then we'll trade up to 22 to get him. It's pure luck.
I think it was this is what I think the grand plan was. I think they looked at Johnny Manziel like, if we can get him at some place we feel value for him, we'll take him. But we don't think it's enough separation between Johnny Manziel and, say, Garoppolo or Derek Carr to where if we don't get him, we can't take one of those guys at 26 and be happy with our quarterback situation.
Okay.
So if you're sold on Johnny, I agree. If you're sold on him and this is our guy, this is the quarterback we have to have, you take him at 8. Maybe you even take him at 4. But if you're not sold on him, you do what they did. Get the guy that you truly wanted. They truly wanted Justin Gilbert. And then, hey, Johnny fell to him. They had an opportunity to get him. Now they have a quarterback. It may be an opportunity to have the steal of the draft.
Okay, so bottom line, Johnny Manziel will have a chip on his shoulder pads the size of the dog pound in Cleveland.
They're going to love him.
And you know why? Because he knows his own front office passed on him twice before they finally took him. Before they lucked into him falling in their lap at 22. Well, that'll be a motivating force, too. And trust me, he said all the right things after the draft last night, but nope, he's thinking deep down.
He's ticked.
Those guys.
Yeah,
you know, I'll show them.
I think his ire is aimed more to the teams who passed on him, not to the team who picked him, even though they passed on him twice before getting him. I think his disgust is with the other teams who picked him, who didn't pick him. Houston, obviously, but especially Jacksonville with Bortles. I think that really rubbed him the wrong way more so than anything else.
All right, gentlemen, we'll leave it there. Coming up, we're talking there was a game last night. I don't know, a basketball game.
There was one viewer.
That was
game
you.
had one viewer
for the Spurs. That was only you.
I was the only man in America, other than the people in the arena, who was watching the game.
Well, good.
But I was also watching the draft.
I don't know how you did it all.
The next big thing, the next new kid, the next overnight sensation, the next rookie, one to watch, the next Hall of Famer, the next intimidator, the next 6-time, the next king. Next. Who's next? Let's find out. Names are made here. The History 300 at Charlotte, Saturday at 2:30 Eastern on ABC.
There were some games last night as well, in case you forgot, with all the NFL excitement. Heat have not forgotten how to win. They beat the Nets 94-82. It wasn't even that close. Meanwhile, the Spurs also looked impressive in their 17-point win over Portland to take a 2-0 lead in the series. Skip Bayless, the only one watching that game last night, besides the people in the arena. Looking like a foregone conclusion, Stephen A. Smith.
Wait, you just mentioned the Spurs on national TV?
We're talking, because they played last night on national television.
I didn't think we'd ever mention them on the show again.
They won. It's crazy. Stephen A. Smith, are we going to Miami and San Antonio for the finals? Is that where we're headed?
I got to tell you, the feeling, it feels like destiny. It feels like destiny, not for 2 reasons. Number one, the way the San Antonio Spurs are playing right now, the way they're abusing Portland. I think Portland will rise up to the challenge. They'll win a game, but based on what we're seeing right now, I don't see them winning more than one game in Portland, and this series looks as if it's going to end in 5 instead of 7. But when I look at the East, because of how Indiana has struggled, because of how Brooklyn looks right now, I mean, Darren Williams, really? 0 for 9,
yeah,
0 points, $98 million. Somebody joked around at the arena last night, Skip, and called them Casper the Friendly Ghost. I mean, my Lord, you got to score, man. I mean, this is why he's here. He's a big-time talent, and I can't attribute you on the floor. I mean, your ankle injury, I know you're not 100%, but my Lord, I mean, Lord have mercy. 0 points, KG, I understand it. Beyond his prime, 37 years of age, been in the league for 18, 19 years. He's got a championship. He's got it. Please. It's just Father Time with KG. That's all that is. Okay? God bless him. But Darren Williams, really? Really? So I'm just looking at it and I'm like, Miami barely has to work. I mean, I just ran across somebody that just saw Eric Spoelstra at the Starbucks grabbing some coffee. They talked about he had a big fat smile on his face. He's just chilling. I don't blame him. And, I mean, it's just nothing. I mean, what's there to say?
Why does that tickle you?
There's nothing that's challenging about it right now for the Heat. I got to hope that Washington, you know, ultimately if they beat Indiana, you know, like I think they will, that they're going to pose a challenge. But, you know, it just seems destiny. But I'm still, as much as it seems that way, guys, I'm not going to go that far yet because remember, Oklahoma City is still San Antonio's kryptonite because of what they can do individually, and the Clippers are nothing to sneeze at. I don't believe that if San Antonio continues to play this way against Portland, that that's indicative of what's going to happen come the Western Conference Finals. It remains to be seen, but it does appear as if destiny is knocking at all of our doors and that Miami and San Antonio appear to be on a collision course because San Antonio is looking the part of a team that is hell-bent on righting a wrong in their eyes in terms of losing in last year's finals. They're not just playing to win basketball games. They're not just playing to win a championship. They're playing like a team who firmly believes what most of us believe, and that is they should be the champions right now if they didn't fall apart in those last 28 seconds of Game 6. I think that has just killed them all year long, the off season and into this season, and they are playing like a team that not only wants the ring, but they want a rematch with Miami. That's how they look.
And by the way, Ray Allen hit a late 3 to sort of clinch the game last night.
Yes, he did.
And as soon as it ripped the cords, I was like, oh.
Bad memories?
Oh.
Nightmare?
I've seen that before, even later in the game, such as Game 6.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. Here's my point. My Spurs are climbing Everest to get back to the NBA Finals. The Miami Heat are jogging downhill to the NBA Finals.
Yep.
I cannot leap to the conclusion, even though I picked my Spurs and I stick with my pick, but I cannot, in right mind, leap to the conclusion that it's a done deal. I love the way they're playing the last 3 games, Game 7, Game 1, Game 2. And I got to tell you, last night in the second quarter of my Spurs game, again, I was the only one watching this, so I'm reporting the news right now to America.
Okay. Tell us what happened.
Skip, I got bad news for you. I actually watched the Spurs game, too.
You did? Did you see scoring on 12 straight possessions in the second quarter to blow the game open?
Yep.
As Tiago Splitter hit 3 out of 4 shots.
Yes.
And Danny Green hit 2 out of 3 threes, and Tony Parker made 4 out of 6. Bellinelli makes 3 out of 3, and Dial makes 3 out of 3. This is blowing a very, very good basketball team off the floor. But the problem is, now they go up to that asylum up in Portland, and I'm not leaping to conclusions. I'm sorry. I picked Spurs in 6. I'll stick with my pick. But I'm not going to jinx my Spurs by saying this is over because these guys are too good. But I must make one point to you, Mr. Smith. You did publicly disrespect my man Tiago Splitter before this series started, I told you that Tiago could guard LaMarcus Aldridge. And in games 1 and 2, he took him solo, took him by himself. And last night, LaMarcus Aldridge shot 6 for 23, mostly guarded, solo, clear out by Tiago Splitter. You have to give this man some national TV respect today because he has earned it. He has become an unsung star of my San Antonio Spurs, and he is doing a tremendous job, an all-star quality job on LaMarcus Aldridge, who torched the Houston Rockets for 46 and 43 in games 1 and 2.
Skip Bayless. LaMarcus Aldridge had a bad game. Tiago Splitter can defend. What happened is that 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when Tiago Splitter was a bona fide scrub, Tiago Splitter, okay? I said so. I also acknowledged last year, incredible improvement in his game, a testament to him and the San Antonio Spurs organization. He continues to improve and to be relatively formidable, especially as a defender. He deserves credit, and he deserves credit last night because LaMarcus Aldridge didn't have it. Had it in game 1 when he dropped 32 and 14, didn't have it yesterday. But let's be clear. Life is a little bit easier, Skip, when you are a defender in the post. And somehow, some way on the weak side, there's Tim Duncan waiting. Let's keep that in mind. If you go back, y'all, and play the tape that you just finished playing, that Skip Bayless wanted you to show, when LaMarcus Aldridge went one way, you didn't ask for it officially, but we know you behind the scenes wielding your magic. Stop it.
You already know. You listen.
You see where Tim Duncan is right there?
Well, he shot a follow-away jump shot.
Skip,
all nothing to do with Tim Duncan?
No. What I'm saying to you is, if you know that if you go in the hole, Tim Duncan is in the vicinity. So that makes you shoot the ball a little bit further away from the basket. All I'm trying to say to you is that Tiago is doing a good job. He deserves respect and credit. But let's pump the brakes just a little bit because it's not like he's Dwight Howard with a sheik on the bench and you're patrolling the paint all by your lonesome because James Harden is allergic to playing defense and everybody comes through the hole like it's open season on Broadway, okay? This is a situation, not to diss James Harden because he's a superstar, but damn it, he doesn't play defense and we all know that. The point I'm making to you is when you look at Tiago Splitter, you don't have, everybody don't have Tim Duncan backing him up like that. That's all I'm trying to say.
Nope, you're wrong. In game 1, when the game was still a game, in the first quarter, LaMarcus Aldridge shot 1 out of 5 on Tiago Splitter. These are clear outs. These are mostly turnaround jump shots. He's having a hard time.
Where's Tim Duncan right there? Where's Tim Duncan right there?
He's under the basket.
Skip. Oh,
give it up to him.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to. That's the wrong tape. I didn't ask for that tape. I asked for the turnaround jump shots. Come on.
Listen, all I'm trying to tell you, Skip, you're right about the jump shot with LaMarcus Aldridge because that's primarily what he shoots. But if you see, every time he's trying to back down with his back to the basket, Tim Duncan's guarding his man, but at the same time he's like watching and he's right in the vicinity. Tim Duncan is the ultimate cushion, bro. He's the ultimate cushion. So don't give me like Tiago Splitter to standing alone on an island. And he's like,
remember how much, wait a second. Stop. How much grief that Kevin McHale took in games 1 and 2? Why don't you double him? You got to run another man out on him, or he'll just turn around and shoot over.
Skip. I'm not talking strategy here. I'm simply talking the greatest power forward, one of the greatest big men to have ever played the game. Whenever Tiago Splitter is manned up, Tim Duncan's in the vicinity. That matters, Skip. That's all I'm saying.
Okay,
that matters.
You're right. I give it up. This is no disrespect to LaMarcus or Damian Lillard. You guys will have huge games in games 3 and 4 back in your building. I respect you. I'm not trying to fire you up here. I just want to be clear about that.
Okay.
Because it's too early to gloat about
That's such a wood. You just don't want to get them motivated. It's reverse psychology.
He's
so ridiculous.
He is ridiculous.
Those guys are all stars. They are the best.
Oh.
And you guys, you'll score.
Oh, man.
You guys will both have 35 in Game 3. I know it. Look out, I'll drop my pin.
The Cleveland Browns select Johnny Manziel.
Excitement would be an understatement in Cleveland, obviously. Johnny Manziel heading there. We now have on the phone his wideout, Josh Gordon. Josh, last time you were here, we asked you about some of the young quarterback prospects, and you said you'd be excited to have Johnny Manziel. Give us your reaction. You immediately tweeted, I know that, but give us your reaction to Johnny football now being a Cleveland Brown.
Oh, I mean, it's a huge thing for Cleveland, not only for the team, but for the city. We're all excited about it, though. I know that, and I think it was the right choice. And Ray and the guys in the front office, they found the right guy that they wanted, and hopefully we make the right moves moving forward.
Josh, I got to ask you, why do you think it was the right choice, considering that you have a lot of people that appeared relatively excited by the quarterback you did have? Why do you feel Johnny Manziel was the right choice?
For several reasons. He seems to be, he's an all-around playmaking quarterback, and we need some more excitement in Cleveland would be great. Despite the guys that we have already, I'm not saying he's gonna come right in and just start off the bat, but he's definitely got to prove himself and prove his value and compete with the rest of the guys that we have here already, like Brian Hoyer and the guys that we just recently signed. But he's on the platform now to be on the biggest stage, and if he's ready for it, I'm sure he'll step up to the challenge. So otherwise, the best will play.
So, Josh, as you mentioned, Brian Hoyer had a really nice stretch for your team last year. Then he had a really bad injury coming off that. Would you personally like to see Johnny win the job and start from the start next year?
I mean, like I said before, I'm definitely about just whoever the best is. We'll see who's most NFL ready coming into training camp. It'll be an obvious decision, I believe, just by seeing who's ready mentally, physically, and who's able to understand and dissect this offense fast enough and understand it quick enough, as new as it is, and for everybody, And as a young rookie, he's come behind the eight ball a lot to play a quarterback position. But as we've seen before, it's been done by previous quarterbacks, and given an opportunity to make plays and given an opportunity to go out there and start is possible. So I guess just like I said, the best will be on the field, so there's no telling.
Looking at your team last year, Josh, is Johnny Manziel, in terms of his personality, the flair, his willingness to win, are those the ingredients that you believe the Cleveland Browns were sorely lacking and desperately needed to acquire and address in this draft?
I think that's actually one of the biggest reasons why I was a fan of the draft choice for picking Johnny, because I felt as though he was a real fiery type of player that wanted to prove himself and wanted to win so badly that he wasn't going to let anything slow him down. And that's the exact type of aura and the exact type of personality we need in the locker room right now in Cleveland to just get everybody boosted and motivated to get ready for the season and to make a playoff push. And a guy like that, I think, he's willing to do anything to help his team win, no matter who it's for. He wants to go out there and play his heart out. And I'm one of those guys, and I can definitely relate. I just want the rest of the guys to feed off of that energy, and hopefully we can bring a lot more wins to Cleveland that way.
Josh, by chance, have you had a chance to talk to Mike Evans about what it's like to catch balls from Johnny?
I have not, but we will find out soon next week, actually.
Well, all I could offer my 2 cents worth, Never stop running, because when you least expect it, he'll escape and throw you a deep one.
That's all right for me, though. That's all right. I'm
Josh
just trying to make a play.
Thank you so much for joining us. Take it easy.
Oh, thank you.
Let's talk about round one, shall we? Not predictable, but some did think Clowney would go first. Brian Clark did, didn't you? Teddy Bridgewater snuck in at the very end and went to the Vikings at 32. The Bills traded up to get Sammy Watkins at 4. However, they did give up their first and fourth round picks next year. We take a moment to reflect. Here's the question. Which team would you say was the biggest loser last night? Mr. Bayless with a sigh.
Mr.
Question
Champion.
for you. Yes.
Mr. Clark. Mr. Smith. The Minnesota Vikings were the biggest loser last night in the first round of the NFL draft. This is Bash the Bruins Day.
Come on.
Because they had 2 first-round picks, albeit the last pick in the first round. But there were a series of reaches to me at 7, 8, and 9. I like Mike Evans, but I don't love him. And for him to go 7 to Tampa Bay, and then for Justin Gilbert, Ryan and I went back and forth about this. I think he would have been there a little bit later. I thought it was a little bit of a reach at 8 to the Browns. And then came the showstopper for me. The second biggest reach to Blake Bortles, who went 3, was Anthony Barr of Carey's Bruins. Again, I'm going to say it again. I just watch TV. All I know is I carefully watch the games on TV. And I need you to leap off my TV screen if you're going to be an NFL star.
Okay.
That is my tried and true scouting method. It has worked for years and years in my media career. Watch the games. I don't break down the coach's tape, but you need to leap off my TV screen. Calvin Pryor. When I would turn on a Louisville game, and I'm about to talk about Teddy Bridgewater, I would turn on Louisville to watch the quarterback. And all of a sudden, the safety, what number was he?
25.
25 would leap off my screen. I'd say, who is 25? He just blew up another guy. Where did that come from? And guess what? Rex Ryan saw the same thing on the coach's tape, and he said, I want 25. And they got Calvin Pryor with the New York Jets, and he will cause Tom Brady and company some problems starting next year. So I watched a lot of Teddy Bridgewater. I just didn't see a franchise quarterback. And then I always say you can only lose your pro day. And I thought he lost it badly because he was crumbling under the pressure of national TV cameras and scouts and executives ringing the football field. He was inaccurate. He went through stretches of inaccuracy, even though his stats looked sensational at Louisville against mediocre competition. But he went through stretches of inaccuracy. He's a great kid. He sat right there in that chair. I don't know that he's got physical toughness. I don't know about the mental toughness that's going to be required to be a franchise-changing quarterback. Is he that much better than Christian Ponder, who's not that bad, actually? If you look, I know Stephen A. makes jokes about he ponders the thought. But Christian Ponder 2 years ago got the Vikings to the playoffs. He had some really good games. He outplayed Aaron Rodgers in the final regular season game. So he's not a bust, but he was always just a little bit frustrated. Like,
so you saying Christian Ponder's a bad man?
He could be just a bad man sometimes, just pure bad. But sometimes he was a bad man, and he was a badder man than Aaron Rodgers that day. But the point is, when you combine Anthony Barr with Teddy Bridgewater with your 2 picks, I'm not impressed. Can you?
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. So this is how it went for me when the Cleveland Browns passed up on Sammy Watkins. They were my team. Okay. I was just upset because I'm a Sammy Watkins fan. I think that he is the surefire star of this draft.
Wow.
He will be the guy that we look back and say there's no holes in his game. He was able to contribute early. That's if E.J. Manuel can get him the ball. Okay. So that's big. Then we go to the Cleveland Browns pick. I was upset then again with Justin Gilbert. Not that he's not a good player. I just thought you still take Sammy Watkins instead of him. Okay. But they come back around and get Johnny Manziel, so that takes them out of my worst. Anthony Barr, I said it earlier, I thought it was the worst pick of the top 10. Wow. But I like Teddy Bridgewater. Okay. I like what the film says. I like 31 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Even if you have some inaccuracy, you're not inaccurate enough to throw a lot of interceptions. I think he's going to be a star in this league because
a star.
He's going to be a star. And you pairing him with Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, that always helps.
I think Teddy Bridgewater can end up being the best quarterback picked in the first round.
Stephen A.
So, I'm not finished.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad.
Wait.
Sorry.
The Jacksonville Jaguars made the biggest mistake of the draft and had the worst round. You take Blake Bortles when Khalil Mack and Sammy Watkins are still on the board, and you take a guy, and you said it, Caldwell said it this morning on Mike and Mike, we don't expect him to play. So what you've done for a team that needs all types of offense, you've got a quarterback that you're not going to play, so you're not going to get better at all. You lose Justin Blackmon, and Sammy Watkins is waiting right there to be taken, and you don't take him. So you're getting nothing out of your first-round pick this year for a team that needs a lot.
Okay, before you go, Stephen A., so you're saying the move at the draft was the draft pick that Buffalo spent to go up to get your guy?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. No, because you give up. Buffalo's not one player away.
Okay.
They gave up a first and a fourth next year. They're not one player away.
Yeah.
Okay. You done?
Done. I'm sorry.
Stephen A., your turn.
I agree with Ryan about Jacksonville. And it's not to knock Bortles because he may very well be that dude. We don't know. My issue is that you drafted a guy that you know you have no intentions of using this coming season. You announced to the world that Chad Henne is your quarterback. And this is after you had the abysmal season yet again that you've been having with a fan base that harbors a lot of trepidation and apprehension when it comes to giving their support to you because of your flagrant ineptitude. To walk around as an organization with such a flagrant level of arrogance, you have to remember that the television stations in Orlando had to apologize to locals for having to switch from a game that was nationally televised to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars games because, local, rules and regulations stipulated that they had to do it. They had to apologize for putting the Jacksonville Jaguars game on. Okay? So when you have that kind of stuff going on, and you have a Khalil Mack and a Sammy Watkins available, and you go with Bortles, and then you say Bortles won't be used this year, you're basically telling your own fan base, look, kick rocks. This is what we're doing. Wait. We'll get there. We'll get there. But you've been stinking. It's not like you're Atlanta that had a bad year last year, but the year before that you were in the NFC Championship game. No. Their ineptitude has been habitual, and it's going on too long. So you're taking your fan base for granted, and that, to me, makes them the biggest loser. You could think about a Tampa Bay and say, Evans, really at that spot, I'm not so sure. You could look at Minnesota with Carr, with Bridgewater, but I believe in Bridgewater. And I believe that he's going to show himself. I look at the Jets getting Pryor. I would have liked them to get them Denard out of Michigan State as opposed to Pryor. Even though Pryor's a hitter, he makes things happen. He's ferocious. They're hoping he's the second coming of Cam Chancellor if you're the New York Jets. But considering the fact that all you have to lean on is Milliner, who had a suspect rookie year, to be kind, he was benched like 3 different times until he showed up the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, and that's your only cornerback because Darrelle Revis is in New England and Antonio Cromartie is gone. I got questions as to why the Jets went the route of the safety instead of a cornerback. But clearly, when you look at Jacksonville, to me, they appear to be the biggest loser, not because they picked Bortles, but because they already designated that he's not going to be utilized next year. You passed up on 2 other big-time players who could contribute immediately, and you basically asked a fan base that has been waiting for you to produce for years to at least wait a couple of more years, which I think is egregious.
And by the way, last but not least, my honorable mention, biggest loser, New York Giants for taking an LSU player. Are you kidding me? Because they have a long history of failure in the league.
We are just not.
Odell Beckham?
Odell can ball.
He can ball.
He's a player.
He can ball.
You know what?
That was cold-blooded.
Odell Beckham might keep Eli from leading the league in interceptions for a 4th time.
He's good.
Well, yeah, listen, with Victor Cruz, with Ruben Randall, and now Odell Beckham.
2 LSU receivers.
I don't mind, but you got to protect Eli, otherwise he's going to continue to throw those interceptions.
Anthony Barr, stay motivated. They don't believe, fellow Bruin.
I think we've just put a big chip on his shoulder.
I mean, I'm telling you. Show him. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day. Game 3 of the Clippers and Thunder is our final take, ladies and gentlemen. It's in L.A. tonight. Game 4 will be Sunday afternoon. Where do you think the series will be after the weekend, Stephen A?
When we return to work Monday morning, the series will be tied 2-2. Whether it's Oklahoma City taking Game 3 before the Clippers respond to Game 4, whether the Clippers are highly motivated for a Game 3 and Oklahoma City with its backs against the wall show up for Game 4, it doesn't matter. Friday and Sunday, Games 3 and 4 will take place at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. And at that time, Oklahoma City will win one of those games. The Los Angeles Clippers will win the other. And this series will be tied 2-2 come Monday morning.
He called it.
I predicted you would say 2-2.
He whispered Stephen A is going to say 2-2.
Well, that's what I've been saying.
Okay.
I said it yesterday.
So, Stephen Naismith, I need to drop on your infinite basketball wisdom before I make my picks for 3 and 4. Will you please tell me, will you please predict how number 0 will play for Oklahoma City?
Oh,
and it's that guy, you know, that guy Westbrook, who sometimes has 0 basketball brains, and then the next stretch he looks like he should be the league MVP, that guy? I don't know what to make of him. What's he going to do in 3 and 4?
I think that Russell Westbrook is going to have a game like he did in Game 1, and I think he's going to have a game like he did in Game 2.
One of those.
He's going to be up and down, up and down. He's going to be that roller coaster ride. I predict he'll drop like 35 to 41 game, and another game he'll have like 7 or 8 turnovers.
Since this has been Bash the Bruins Day here on First Take, thanks to Anthony Barr, who went way too high in the NFL draft, I'm not going to bash this ex-UCLA Bruin named Russell Westbrook.
Thank you.
I'm not bashing him either.
I got your back. I think you're going to have a Game 2 in Game 3 and Game 4. I'm going out on the limb and saying the Thunder will win both of these games this weekend in Los Angeles and go home 3-1 to close this thing out. I just think they are better than the Clippers. They have crushed the Clippers on the backboards in both games, and I think the combination of Russell leading the way, Durant going along for the great ride, will be too much for CP3 and company.
As great of a year as I believe Blake Griffin has had and worthy of MVP candidacy, Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan, and the reigning 6th man of the year, Jamal Crawford, will not allow the Clippers to lose 2 games at the Staples Center. They will lose 1, but there's no way in hell they're losing 2. The Los Angeles Clippers and the Oklahoma City Thunder will split and return to OKC tied 2-2.
All right, listen, tied 2-2. That is their take.
I got your back, Bruins.
I'm going Thunder. We're done. For Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, I'm Carrie Champion. Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can catch First Take Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on ESPN2.
What makes the Indy 500 the greatest spectacle in racing?
Michael Morgan.
We are playing. Everyone in the grandstands are on their feet.
You're now the winner of the Indianapolis 500, my friend.
The Indianapolis 500, Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on ABC.